gotta follow Jim Walsh. So good morning. Welcome to the Bill of Rights Bash, Rally for Your Rights. My name is Nate Hockett. I serve as a deputy sheriff. I've served for over 30 years as a peace officer, since 1985, both reserve and full-time. And I have a myriad of training and experience. You might say I'm old school because many of us peace officers from that generation are imbued with a code and a reverence and a fealty to the Constitution. Right, sir? I'm also a retired Marine Corps officer and a veteran of Desert Storm and the war in Iraq in '03. I served 22 and a half years. I have some of the best geopolitical, tactical, and strategic staff officer and warfighting training in the world. I received my bachelor's degree from Eastern Washington University in criminology with an emphasis in law and government. My law professors taught me very well. I've also served on the board of the National Constitutional Sheriffs Association, and I was invited by those sheriffs to help educate sheriffs and elected officials, so I'm no dullard. And here's my disclaimer. I do not represent my agency or the sheriff. I'm here as one of you, your fellow citizen. So understand the logical, rational, and legal concepts that I'm going to share with you, as well as the forethought and quotes our founders had from their own experiences with tyranny. Yep, I said it, tyranny. Do we have any veterans out there? Raise your hands. All right, brothers, welcome. We all swore an oath to the Constitution. The same oath as all elected public servants and appointees must swear. I have never renounced that oath, and I will give my life if needed to keep that oath and defend the Constitution and the rights it protects. My life is not my own. So this is the Bill of Rights Bash, so let's talk about rights. And Jim touched on it. Man, he's a fiery orator, isn't he? The U.S. Constitution is supreme law. So is our state constitution. Both frame the basis for the formation and structure of government in this country. So let me iterate that the constitutions are supreme law. They are lex rex, king law. For every elected or appointed public servant must swear an oath to them. It is the law that requires their oath. Without swearing, you cannot hold office in this country or enforce the law. The citing authority is Article 6, Section 3 in the federal Constitution. That the Constitution declares itself supreme law is in Article 6, Section 2. What is also supreme law is the Bill of Rights. Actually, it's a Bill of Protections. Because in 1789, not all the states would ratify that Constitution until they had a Bill of Protections. Ratified in New York in 1791. So just to be clear, the Bill of Rights or Bill of Protections is part of the Constitution and supreme law. There are those who say it is not. It is. Does anyone have constitutional rights? No, you don't. You have inherent rights. Governments do not have rights, people do. They are based in the nature and birth and personhood of your birth on this earth. It is those natural inherent rights that are codified into law in the state and federal constitutions. In our state constitution, the first article is Declaration of Rights, our inherent rights, the ones right here, or the rights retained by the people. You see two pieces of paper, the state and federal constitutions do not give you rights. They codify those rights into law for all men and governments to obey and respect. You have constitutional protections of those rights. The elected public servants swore an oath to protect those rights. It's law that they do so. But do they really?
No.
In May of 1821, Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter to Samuel West stating, The Declaration of Independence is the declaratory charter of our rights and the rights of man. To emphasize that further, in an earlier treatise in 1774, Jefferson wrote, "In the rights of British America, a free people claim their rights as derived from the laws of nature, and not a gift of their chief magistrate, or their legislature, or government overlords, for that matter." And again, John Dickinson, an elector from Pennsylvania, in 1766, in his treatise, warning to the colonies of rights to freedom and of traders, rights are not annexed to us by the parchments and seals. They are created in us by the decrees of providence, which establish the law of our nature. They are born with us, exist with us, and cannot be taken from us by any human power without taking our lives. In short, they are founded on the immutable maxims of reason and justice. And for persons who are not of faith, they are your human rights. There's nothing new under the sun, as Solomon said. Man has been the same for time eternal. All men are temptable, corruptible, infallible, unless they choose to follow moral precepts. And government enslavement is not a moral precept. I am not a slave, and I will not be ruled. Government does not rule. It represents the people for their good, meaning the good protection of their liberty and property ownership. And as Hamilton said in the ratifying convention in New York, "Here, sir, the people govern." You see, government doesn't rule, we do. We are not slaves, although it doesn't seem so. The people hold the power, and that's codified in our state constitution that Jim mentioned in Article 1, Section 1, political power. All. I don't know what all means to you, but all means all to me. Political power is inherent in the people, and governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. Here is my prime directive, and are established to protect and maintain inherent rights. Are most electors doing that? Some are. They truly are, and they're fighting hard up there in Olympia. But the majority of them are not, because they are ill-educated into their own form of civil government. They think it's their job to write laws to protect us. Well, I can show you a dozen or more Supreme Court cases at all levels that say it's not the responsibility of government to protect you or your stuff. Because had they ruled that way, every crime committed against you, you'd be able to sue your sheriff, chief, your officers. Because we're not omnipresent. You call, we show up. They in government are bound by oath and law to protect our rights, nothing more. There is no safe. Reality tells us that safe and protected mean no harm, right? Because while you're here, somebody's kicking your door in who's protecting your stuff. But they in government tell us those laws are necessary for our protection. William Pitt, in his 1783 speech, said, "Necessity is the plea for every infringement of human freedom. It is the argument of tyrants, it is the creed of slaves." Government is our creation. It did not create itself, but men came together to form civil societies and create ordered liberty for themselves and to govern themselves. The creation never rules over its creator. It is created for the benefit of the creator, us, the people. And this creation is not doing a good job anymore. To quote Ronald Reagan, government is the problem. It's broken today. In 1762, Pastor Abraham Williams, in his Election Day sermon, stated, "The end and design of civil society and government, from this view of its origin, must be to secure the rights and properties of its members and promote their welfare," not the free stuff, "that they may be secure in the enjoyment of all their rights and properties righteously acquired." And Madison stated, "Government is instituted to protect property of every sort, as well as that which lies in the various rights of individuals as that which the term particularly expresses. This being the end of government alone is a just government, which impartially secures to every man whatever is his own. Are those in government doing that? They're not. You must hold them accountable with the very document they swore to.
Hold them accountable.
Lord Oliver Cromwell, the High Protector in the English Commonwealth in 1653, when he disbanded the Parliament, he said, "You have sat too long here for any good you have been doing. Depart, I say, and let us have been done with you. In the name of God, go." There are those up there who don't need to be there because they don't understand what their purpose is. Government's broken. We have no constitutional Republican form of government really anymore. We have an oligarchy and a socialist democracy. The Constitution, the supreme law, says that we're a republic and individual rights are greater than the government and the collective will of the people. American democracy is merely free speech. I'm going to vote for you, but I'm not going to vote for you. I'm going to vote for that, but not for that. And to speak out and peaceably assemble and address our government like we're doing here today without fear of reprisal in any form by that government. Madison said in Federalist 10, democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have been found incompatible with individual security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives that they have been violent in their deaths. We are a republic. It states so in Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution. It is in republics, not democracies, that inherent natural individual rights are protected and cannot be changed, abridged, or usurped by legislation or mob rule, i.e. initiative process. Examples of those usurpations and abridgments are illegitimate laws like I-594, this upcoming 1639, or having to pay permission from the government to carry a firearm concealed. It's illegitimate law. Albert Gallatin, an elector from New York, in a speech in 1789 in New York stated, "The whole of the Bill of Rights is a declaration of the right of the people at large or considered as individuals. It establishes some rights of the individual as unalienable, which consequently no majority has the right to deprive them of." And because we're a republic and I-594 is not law, it's illegitimate and the legislature needs to repeal it. That's why before it was ratified by initiative, WASPIC, the Washington Sheriffs and Police Chiefs, said it is unenforceable. Truly, our sheriffs could fix this, since they are the supreme peace officers over federal, state, and local peace officers. But those remarks are for another day. And just like the requirement for concealed carry permits, they're illegitimate. Do citizens get free speech permits or permits to attend church or exercise religious liberty? No. It violates the 14th Amendment of the Equal Protection Clause. I don't get to choose which laws I enforce that you need to pay for permission for, and that which I don't. I have to protect all your rights equally. You see, the courts have already ruled in the past on these issues. Here are some little-known Supreme Court cases, and the leftists just love stare decisis. It's a Latin term, stare decisis et non quieta mover. What it means is to stand by decisions and not to disturb settled matters. Before I share with you those cases, what Chief Justice John Marshall, in his ruling opinion, said in Marbury versus Madison, because he was telling the courts that they had to abide by the Constitution. Marshall said the particular phraseology of the Constitution of the United States confirms and strengthens the principle supposed to be essential to all written constitutions, that a law repugnant to the Constitution is void, and that courts, as well as other departments, are bound by that instrument. Building and planning? I don't know. But also, in Cooper versus Aaron, 1958, and these are supported by other court cases, The Supreme Court said that any judge who does not comply with his oath to the Constitution of the United States wars against that Constitution and engages in acts in violation of the supreme law of the land. The judge has engaged in acts of treason. And also they further stated that no state legislator or executive or judicial officer can war against the Constitution without violating his oath or his undertaking to support it. You have to hold your elected officials, your elected public servants accountable. Protect your rights.
How do we do that?
You have to use the law against them. It's the same law that's going to be used against you. But your rights are inherent. You've got to assert them. But here's several other court cases that spell it out. Norton v. Shelby County, 1886. An unconstitutional act is not law. It confers no rights, it imposes no duties, affords no protections, it creates no office. It is in legal contemplation as an operative as though it had never been passed. Right? Murdoch v. Pennsylvania, 1943. No state shall convert a liberty into a license and charge a fee therefor. Because liberty is inherent in all of us. Shuttlesworth v. City of Birmingham, Alabama, 1963. What was happening in Alabama in 1963? Civil rights. That's what we're doing here. We're fighting for our best birthrights, right?
Right.
But in that court, if the state converts a right, a liberty, into a privilege, the citizen can ignore the license and fee and engage in the right with impunity. Or Miranda v. Arizona, right? Peace officers know that. Every citizen knows it. You have the right to remain silent, right?
Yep.
But what they forget about what the Miranda court said, where rights secured by the Constitution are involved, there can be no rulemaking or legislation which would abrogate them, meaning get rid of them, stop them. However, the courts have also said, they gave us a warning in Summer v. Beeler in 1875. All persons are presumed to know the law, and if they act under an unconstitutional enactment of the legislature, they do so at their peril and must take the consequences. My advice is never ever give up your rights, but you have to know them first. Right. You see, no one has to obey illegitimate laws. The courts, the judicial branch, doing their proper job at that time, ruled correctly back then. As a peace officer, I don't have to enforce illegitimate laws from Olympia. I'm protected, just like all of the elected and appointed public servants in this state, by our state constitution. Article 1, again, Declaration of Rights, Section 6, the mode of administering an oath. The mode of administering an oath or affirmation shall be such as may be most consistent with and binding upon the conscience of the person to whom such oath or affirmation may be administered. It's a protection for you, the people, but it's a protection for me, so that I can't be forced, or the elected officials, to comply with illegitimate law. They have a duty not to enforce them. And when government or any of its agents do such things, it's a crime in this state. They commit the crime in the RCW, a gross misdemeanor called official misconduct. RCW 9A80-010. A public servant is guilty with intent to obtain a benefit or deprive another person of a lawful privilege. It's not and deprive another person, it's or. He or she commits an unauthorized act under the color of law, or he or she intentionally refrains from performing a duty imposed on him or her by law. Do they have a duty to protect your rights and obey and follow the Constitution and not write laws that impinge them? Yes, they do. Or the other misdemeanor of failure of duty of a public officer. Whenever any duty is enjoined by law upon any public officer or other person holding any public trust or employment, their willful neglect to perform such duty, except as otherwise specifically provided for, shall be a misdemeanor. Do you think when they vote for these laws that impinge our rights, it's willful? Yeah.
Loopholes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Loopholes.
All right, I'll hurry up here. So, regarding our Second Amendment rights, Tench Coates and George Mason were instrumental in writing the Second Amendment. If you truly think about it, we can own really anything we want. Tench Coates, writing in the Pennsylvania Gazette, February 20th, 1788, said, "The power of the sword, say the minority, is in the hands of Congress. My friends and countrymen, it is not so, for the powers of the sword are in the hands of the yeomanry of America from 16 to 60. The militia of these free commonwealths, entitled and accustomed to their arms, that Congress has no power to disarm the militia. Their swords and every terrible implement of the soldier are a birthright of Americans. The unlimited power of the sword is not in the hands of either the federal or state government, but where I trust in God, it will always remain in the hands of the people." For a reason, because later Tench Coates wrote, "As civil rulers, not having their duty to the people duly before them, may at times attempt to tyrannize, and as the military forces which must be occasionally raised to defend our country might pervert their power to the injury of their fellow citizens. The people are confirmed in the next article in their right to keep and bear their private arms." The bottom line is that any government in the history of the world that has disarmed its people has eventually oppressed them and then murdered them. And government agents can't use the Nuremberg defense, "I was just following orders." Befehl ist Befehl, Kameraden. It's German. It means orders are orders, comrades. It doesn't work that way. We're accountable. Abraham Lincoln said in a debate speech between Stephen Douglas in 1859 in Ohio, "We, the people, are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who pervert the Constitution." The civil institutions of our nation are in shambles, and we are unmoored from our constitutional foundations and are ruled over by the arbitrary and capricious will of men today, rather than the rule of law. This is our government, and we must treat it like we own it, because we do.
Free thought for free people.